Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Association Rockstars, where we hear about the journey and insights of amazing association executives and partners who are building the industry of tomorrow. I'm your host, Lowell Aplebaum, CEO and Strategy Catalyst for Vista, Cova, where we partner with organizations on strategic facilitation. And with me today is our first international rock star. Toni Brearley is the CEO of the Australasian Society of Association Executives, the peak professional membership body for individuals working in the association sector in Australia and New Zealand. Having spent over 16 years in the not-for-profit sector, Toni has developed a unique understanding of both the challenges and rewards of working for purpose. Toni, we're so happy to have you with us.
Thank you. It's amazing to be here.
Well, I usually say it's so happy to have you with us today, but I think for those of us in the United States, I'd have to say it's so nice to have you with us tomorrow, I think, with the time.
Tomorrow is amazing, by the way.
Excellent. We're so looking forward to it. We just do this every day and get the forecast of how it's going to look. So we do like to start with a similar question. We like to recognize and talk about like what makes somebody a rock star, and clearly it comes from places of bringing strengths to the table. And so we think those strengths serve us well as superpowers, and are just curious, what are one of your skills? What's one of your superpowers that you have found has helped you in your journey?
Yeah, I found this question really interesting, actually, because it makes you really dig down and think, you know, what is me? What is me? Now, I think for me, it is finding the possible. I think that's something that I have done my whole life, is when people tell me I can't do something, it makes me want to do it even more. So to put a name to it, and I think it's more than positivity. I think it's that tenacity to keep working through a problem to get to where you want to be. So some of you may have heard me talk about this before, but Association Pollyanna could be one of them, could be my name. But yeah, I feel that I bring not only a positive energy, but also that tenacity to make things happen when previously people have said, oh, we can't do that.
I love that. I love seeing the possible in the impossible. That is a great superpower. Is that something you've always had? Is that something that you feel like you developed over the course of your career?
I think it's something I've definitely developed. I think it's something that was instilled in me, though, to be honest, from my dad. He, beyond the telling me that, you can be anything, because that's what we do tell our children, I distinctly remember a conversation we had one day, and I was a surly teenager, and he was the wise father, as that rhetoric goes, and I know what that rhetoric's like now. But I think he was sort of saying to me, you could be anything. What do you want to be? And I think I was kind of being a little bit, obnoxious, and saying, well, I'm going to be Prime Minister of Australia. And he went, well, what's stopping you? And I thought about it, and I thought, he's right, I didn't say that, obviously. I was a teenager, but I think that was kind of the core of how you get there is, what are the barriers? If we're saying that this can't be done, what are the barriers? And then how do we break them down, or leap over them, or go around them? So I think that's something that it was instilled, but I've definitely developed.
Well, perhaps your leadership at the Australasian Association is your stepping stone to becoming Prime Minister.
Potentially. I'm not sure I want the job anymore, to be very, very honest with you. But, I think, just that ability to break down the barriers. The other thing he used to say to me, and hi, Dad, he probably will watch at some stage, is what's the worst that can happen? What is the worst that can happen? Can we deal with that? Okay, let's go. And I say that a lot to my team. Well, what's the worst that can happen? And I think sometimes the worst is not that bad.
Yeah.
And if the worst is bad, then we don't do it, obviously. But if you can kind of that worst case scenario plan, and then plan for that worst case scenario, then quite often most things can be done.
So your dad instilled that philosophy in you, right? Like this feels like this dual philosophy of finding the possible and the impossible with what's the worst that can happen, right?
Yeah.
In your own career, I mean, you've been in the nonprofit space, as we heard, for years at this point. I mean, where did you find you were able to start sort of employing that philosophy in a leadership capacity? Like, where along the way was that really sort of guiding you to a path where you're the head of the organization?
Well, I think it's even, how I got to the nonprofit sector, to be very fair. Like, I didn't start at that end, in the sector. I started in, my first job was in commercial real estate. I was going to be an accountant. I'm still pretty good with budgets, mind you, but yeah, that's kind of where my career
Not a bad
started.
skill. Not a bad skill to have.
It is a good skill to have, I must admit. It annoys my accountant, but that's good. But yeah, so I think my career has not been linear. I've gone from an accounts assistant to a PA. I've worked in recruitment. I've done a whole lot of things, and I think even just getting to where I am now is thinking and having the confidence to go, I think I can do that. That's not impossible. That's not an impossible leap. Let's work out the barriers that I need to break down to be able to, do that job and then that job and then that job. So, yeah, that's probably, from a real kind of personal perspective, I think that's where we've got to.
So from accounting and corporate real estate, when did you sort of recognize that the nonprofit space, not the association space, wasn't just a job, but like, a field you wanted to be in?
Yeah, so my very first role in nonprofits was for an organisation that provided community mental health services, so in-home mental health services. Yeah. I had and I marched in with all of my, knowledge, and to be really honest, just meeting the people and getting a completely different perspective of life and realizing that there's this, it's not all about the money. It's not all about making money, making profit, and being able to genuinely see the progression of somebody's health, somebody's well-being. That was when I went, I like this. This is good. This feels good. But I think the other thing for me was then bringing some of that corporate experience into the nonprofit world, and we're talking 15 years ago. So sure. Kind of doing the whole, well, it's all very nice to be making a difference, but we need to make sure we can keep making a difference. So how do we make sure that we're commercial, that we're viable, that we're sustainable? Where are the areas that we can develop, and what are the things or the initiatives we can implement to make sure that that's happened?
Do you think over the course of the past 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, that nonprofit organizations have gotten better at being at the bottom line, right? Have they gotten better at incorporating this need for profit into some of those practices into making them a sustainable organization?
Oh, I think without doubt. At the end of the day, not for profit is a tax status, yeah. We need to make sure that we're making more money than we spend so we can keep doing what we're doing. Ultimately, we make much more money than we spend so we can do more things. So I think that has certainly started to become more apparent. The other thing, though, I think our sector probably does need to watch out for is I think the for-profit sector has certainly worked out that there is more to running a business and profit. So they have become much more purpose driven as well. Yeah. So I think, we're probably coming to a really interesting time where maybe those two sectors are coming more closer together than what they have been before. And I think that's going to be a really interesting space for the future.
With the, if you happen to be able to click video, we'd love to see your face. There we go.
I lost myself then, yes.
We had your voice. That closer intersection between the for-profits taking on sort of like a mission driven to hopefully have a better bottom line. What do you think that means that those that are leading nonprofits need to do to adapt their own sort of leadership styles to better compete or better lead?
I think the recognition of really what we do well, we need to recognize that as a skill. So we have no problem working out the purpose. We, in fact, live, breathe, and eat purpose. I just don't know that we know that we do. You know, this is what corporates are paying, you know, lots of money and building, you know, CSR teams and all, you know, triple bottom line teams around. We do this well. We need to make sure that we remember that, but also communicate it in a way that it means something to the people that we want, you know, engaging with our products and services, whether that's the membership, whether that's, you know, purchasing our services. Yeah. Because that's what the corporates are really good at, hearts and minds stuff, and not resting on the laurels of, oh, we're a not-for-profit, or, you know, we're the association, so they should come to us. Right. I think, you know, tomorrow's member is certainly going to think less about that and more about, well, what is the best fit for me?
That tomorrow's member is an interesting premise, right? I mean, there's generational shift obviously happening with all the disruptions happening right now in society. There's outside of generation shift happening, right? And so that sort of the goodwill that organizations have built up, it feels like it's not necessarily what's going to drive their success for the future. I mean, from what you're seeing in any of the major shifts and disruptions happening, I mean, any thoughts about from what's coming where you think organizations need to be focused?
I think we need to be really focused on personalization. If we look, we all point to the Netflix and the Uber and all those sorts of things, but I actually think, you know, small businesses are doing the same thing. They're using technology tools. They're small and they're agile, and they're getting to know their customer really well. I think we need to re-engage with our customer. We need to get to know our customers a little bit. Sometimes I feel that we think we know them. We did personas. We did our personas 5 years ago, and you know, we're good to go. Right. And I'm not sure that is always the best approach. I think it's a good foundation, but I think we need to dig deeper.
I frequently say that listening is the best master skill that our leaders and our boards can have right now, to be able to ask amazing questions and to hear. You know, as you think about the idea of reacquiring the knowledge of who our customers are and what they need, as you think about the leaders we need for the future, I mean, as you see that, what do you think that's going to look like? The leaders who are really good at that.
I think what you've just said, I think we need to listen more. But maybe ask more questions. Ask the right questions. And I think this, don't assume. I think that's, for me, the really big, if we've learned anything out of this year, isn't it, let's not assume we know the outcome. Let's be open to a different ending or a different, outcome. And, you know, as I say, I think this year may have taught us that a lot.
I was gonna say, if you know the outcomes, I would love to know it. If you happen to know the outcomes, I'll take those.
I keep saying, if I had a crystal ball, I certainly would be able to retire right now. So yeah.
Do you think that the nonprofit sector, that the associations that we work for, that we work with, are going to come out and see a greater success, or do you think that there's a path of greater challenge ahead? What would you say from your point of view?
I think I don't think it's homogenous, and I think that's something that we're learning. I think what we've seen over here is those organisations that had started down a certain path had certainly, I don't know, and this whole success failure thing is another thing that I'm not sure it's binary either. Yeah. I think that those organisations that knew why they were there, that had previously built relationships, whether that's with stakeholders, with government, with members, future members, those organisations that already were on that path have certainly seemed to have handled the crisis a little bit better than those that had not, and all of a sudden not only had to respond, but had to kind of respond with, oh, what are we responding with? I think it's probably not really answering your question, but I think we need to, it's that path that people are going to be successful on, is ensuring that the building blocks are in place, but we're questioning those building blocks every step of the way.
I like the idea of questioning and about trying to seek possibility. You know, your superpower of finding the possible and the impossible feels like an important one for building that possible reality you want to see. Any advice to those coming up that are potential rock stars about how you learn to do that, right? About what is the approach to that?
I think, firstly, don't take no for an answer. You know, with the greatest respect, CEOs working with their boards are their most engaged members, yeah? So they think that everything you do is fantastic, which is why they're on the board and why they do what you do. They're not your best litmus test for new ideas and new thinking. So sometimes you will get an immediate no. Right. Respectfully say, okay, but you know, back it up with some data and some evidence of why it's not okay. I think really identifying barriers, but again, it's just thinking about what might a different future be. Right. If, you know, what I talk about unusual alliances that I've seen throughout this crisis, people working together that you would never have, you know, wouldn't have traditionally have worked together, but their purpose, whatever that may be. And I had a great example the other day about two organizations with completely different philosophical values, but their outcome was to feed the homeless. So one came from a very, you know, church-based, mission-based point of view. Right. Another came from a very, very different, you know, social justice point of view. Normally in a room, they wouldn't work together very well. You know, that their philosophy of the way that they approach things was different. But they worked out that pooling the resources in a time where things were constrained, they both actually achieved their purpose, which was to feed the homeless. And so they worked together in this unusual alliance. Yeah. Will it work forever? Maybe not. But I think that's the thing, is what could be possible? What do we need to achieve? What is our purpose? Yeah. And, you know, what are some of the barriers? And if we can break down those barriers in a way that may not have been done in that way before, then I think we open ourselves up to a whole different way of thinking.
Well, I love the inherent philosophy of being open to possibility, right? That's where innovation comes in. That's where creation comes in. That's
exactly.
Where growth comes in. I love that. So our time has gone by quickly. I just want to ask one more question that we've been starting to close with. And not that in any way that you are near end of career. We still have perhaps the Prime Minister seat ahead, perhaps not. But what legacy do you want to leave behind as you think about your own sort of mark on this space and how you want to leave it behind?
It's, you know, so often we go for grand legacies, but if I can have made a profound impact on somebody's career that has allowed them to help or achieve an outcome for their membership that they can actually point to and say, you know, by doing this, I made a difference. And it doesn't have to, you know, we don't have to have changed the world. It could be something really small. I think that's enough for me. Yeah. And maybe if I can do that exponentially, that would be great. You know, one person at a time, I think a type legacy would be awesome.
Well, I think your dad would say, what's stopping you? And that you're doing it all.
Yeah, get to it. Get to work.
Get to work. It's a good philosophy for all of us. I know it's tomorrow morning there, but thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us today. It's really been a pleasure to reconnect with you and to hear some of your perspectives and thoughts.
My pleasure.
And I want to, as always, give the greatest of thanks to Amy Hager, who's there and engaging with you online with all the comments and helping to make sure Association of Rockstars is produced at the highest quality. And of course, thanks to everyone listening in. As always, we look forward to hearing your voice, your questions, your recommendations for future rock stars, so we can continue to build this success together. Until next time, Association Rock On.